You want to do Q&A? We're really behind, but okay. Let's do 3 questions. Michael.
Can someone talk about the bidding process? In other words, what is the expectation of someone having, especially a generic .health or .traffic or what would someone just talk about how that bidding process would look from a magnitude point of view?
Okay.
My understanding that it's going to be in rounds. I don't know, maybe Kurt, you could address that. From my reading of the guidebook, it's going to be an auction process that goes in rounds, and depending on where you end up, it's going to have like elimination rounds.
And that's going to all be public?
I assume right now it's supposed to be public, right?
So you're going to know that company X bid $2 million and then company Y.
Well, you're going to know who you're bidding against. You're going to have notification. It may be 2, it may be 10, depending on how many applicants are there for that same.
But is it going to be like an auction at Sotheby's where people are saying $5 million and then so? Does anyone know that?
I don't know if anybody knows. Kurt? I think Kurt has to address that.
The auction process is really well defined in the guidebook. I forget if it's called an ascending clock or a descending clock auction, but the bids are made public and you have time to meet or exceed a bid. But the process is defined with great specificity, and since I have the microphone, I get to say that auctions are really the dispute resolution method of last resort, or the contention resolution method of last resort. You get a priority if you're a community TLD, and so you would take a precedence there. If there is no community TLD, there's an opportunity for the parties to negotiate. This isn't like a spectrum auction where parties aren't allowed to talk. Parties are encouraged to negotiate and find the settlement, which is, we think, a much more economical solution than going to auction. So at the end of the day, we think that there will be relatively fewer no auctions.
Thank you, Kurt. Couple other questions. Is that good for you, Michael? Okay. Anyone else? Yes?
Are the 50 states here in the U.S., is everybody expected to bid on that, or is that, what will happen if, let's say, for example, New York does something and California does not? Has there been anything in terms of geography to try to just put everything on somewhat of a level playing field? Or?
Sure. Over the last several ICANNs, there's been vocal groups that have been lobbying U.S. top cities, but more world cities, and we have seen several applicants for .NYC, including New York putting out RFI and RFP process. .SFO, .Vegas are other vocal U.S. groups, and I'm sure that right now there are a ton of conversations with at least the top 20 or 30 or 50 U.S. cities. Anyone else?
States.
Anyone else want to comment?
I was going to say that there are some pretty specific guidelines about geographical names, and you should really be familiar with those before you go forward. There's no common practice between cities or between states or whatever, but there are guidelines that ICANN's put into place to protect geographical names.
And there actually is a whole section. There's a special consent form. If you're going to register the name of I don't know if it's states or cities, in order to do that, you have to get consent. And there's an actual consent form. Again, there's a whole section. We have a separate panel on government, so that'll come up later.
And then each city could put its own also criteria. Yes?
Just another question in regard to sort of the generic brands, like say .hotel, .airplane, anything like that. Is ICANN sort of expecting these businesses to come together before the application process, or are they expecting sort of, if you have multiple bids, that sort of is going to be part of the application process? I'm just sort of wondering, I guess, what's the advice to give to those clients where there's going to be multiple applications for sort of that generic brand? Like what is sort of the recommended practice?
I think we're definitely going to be touching upon that on the third panel, but if anyone wants to answer it now, you could. Sure.
This is Mike from VeriSign. I can say that we publicly announced a partnership with the American Banking Association and BITS, BITS, who are another industry association. And we are talking to a number of other industry associations as well, because we see that as the key area where you can bring together a whole industry and try and reduce the number of competing applications, and who would be a better steward of a GTLD than an industry-based association. Obviously, you do have to question the global nature of this, and you know, if an industry association comes forward, they should consider other associations from other countries as well.
And I think that last point is a very good point. Well taken. One more question, and we're going to take a break. All right, great. Let's take a break and come back in about 15 minutes.